Chapter 12 of Hard to Beat by a Self-Made Man. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 12. The Hempen Necklace. Shuffling steps on the staircase soon announced the approach of Mr. Grubb. He was coming in answer to Mr. Smithers' signal. When he entered the room, Bob saw that he carried several pieces of soft new cord in one hand and a short clothesline in the other. "Get a chair, Grubb," were the words with which Mr. Smithers addressed his confederate. Mr. Grubb went into the front room and brought a stout chair. "As I believe in people making themselves comfortable when they can, I will request you, Mr. Brooks, to make use of this chair," said Mr. Smithers with an inexplicable smile. "The stool suits me all right," replied Bob, who suspected the big man's intentions. "I prefer that you should use the chair," said Mr. Smithers in a tone which showed Bob that he did not have any choice in the matter. So, fearing the outcome of this exchange of seats, he seated himself in the chair as directed. "Why can't you be as obliging in reference to that order for the Red Dog stock I spoke about? It will save you a heap of trouble." "Because I don't propose to be swindled," said Bob stoutly. "I think I made you a bona fide offer of 12 cents a share for the 30,000 shares you hold of Red Dog. That is $3,600 for the lot. There was no swindle in that, was there? Could you have sold the stock anywhere in New York for over half of that, you little monkey? You know you couldn't. But you banked against the future, as indicated in that letter of mine which you had the luck to pick up. You intended to do me, the legitimate owner of that pointer, out of results I expected to gain. In your eagerness to go the whole hog, you have overshot your mark. Instead of the $3,600 you might have received, you will now get nothing. Now, Grubb, tie the young man to the chair with a clothesline." And Mr. Smithers grabbed Bob and held him so that he could not move. Mr. Grubb immediately got busy, and the boy was soon secured, though his arms were left free. "Now, Grubb, fetch that table with the writing materials from the front room," said Mr. Smithers. The obedient accomplice lost no time in carrying out his orders. Mr. Smithers drew the stool up to the table, which had been placed in front of the boy, and sitting down facing Bob, soon produced the following. "New York, October 12, 1905. Messrs. Scrooge and Sharpley, 34 Wall Street, New York. Please deliver to the bearer, Mr. Smithers, my 30,000 shares of Red Dog stock, and take his receipt for same." "Now sign it," said the big man after he had read it over to the boy, offering Bob the pen. The youth shook his head. "All right," replied Mr. Smithers coolly. "I will have to give you a taste of the hempen necklace. Tie his thumbs together, Grubb. Tight, mind you. That's the ticket. Now, the necklace." Mr. Grubb put one of the hempen threads around Bob's neck and left just sufficient play for the boy to breathe easily. Then he wound the two ends around one another and made them fast to the chair top. After drawing Bob's head back as far as it would go without choking him, Mr. Smithers then picked up the water pitcher and soaked the hempen cord well with water. "The chief advantage of the hempen necklace as a persuader for obstinate people is that when you wet it, it has a tendency to shrink on drying. This is rather unpleasant to the person most interested in the phenomenon," explained the big man derisively. "This is an instance where a little foresight is worth a considerable amount of hindsight. If you can see through a millstone, then there's a hole in it. I would suggest that you sign this paper before things go any further." But Bob, though he now had a strong suspicion of what he was up against, was made of stern stuff, and he did not propose to give in until it was impossible for him to hold out. As he gave no sign of yielding to Mr. Smithers' suggestion, that gentleman turned to his accomplice. "You may go downstairs, Grubb. If I should need you, I will give you the signal." The necklace was slow in its development, but as sure as death, and the red-faced man was in no hurry, as he had the whole day and night before him. He drew a cigar from his vest pocket, lit it with much deliberation, and began to pace up and down the room with his hands behind his back. Every once in a while he would pause to look at his victim, or to glance out of the window where he could see the clouds breaking away and cold gleams of sunshine peeping through on the water-soaked landscape. A smell of cooking came up through the cracks in the floor from the room below. About this time Bob noticed that the cord about his thumbs was becoming painfully tight. He drew his hands up a couple of times in an effort to get relief, and Mr. Smithers observed the movement with a sardonic grin. "Hurts a little, does it?" he said maliciously. "That isn't a circumstance to what's coming, my friend. If you're ready for the paper is ready for you." But Bob set his teeth together and wondered how long he could bear the torture in prospect. "Some people are born pig-headed. Others acquire pig-headedness," remarked Mr. Smithers as he chucked his cigar butt into a corner. "I don't know to which class you belong, Master Brooks, but if this patent of mine doesn't cure you of it, nothing will." Half an hour passed, and not only had the pressure around Bob's thumbs increased to real torture, but the cord was now contracting his throat, so that it was beginning to be a trouble to breathe without a sense of suffocation. Mr. Smithers watched the results of his scheme with great satisfaction. "It'll fetch him all right," he muttered, rubbing his hands together. "It's bound to." He drew a sharp pocket-knife and laid it on the table, ready for business when the boy yielded. At last Bob could not repress a groan, and the drops of perspiration stood out on his forehead. Then he began to gasp a little for breath, but still he held out. "Haven't you had enough of this yet?" asked Mr. Smithers, angry at his endurance, but the boy gave no sign. "Hang you for a cantankerous little monkey," growled the big man impatiently. Then he noted that the boy's face was deathly white, and his head had swung helplessly to the right. This sign alarmed him, for he had not the slightest intention of killing his victim. Bending down, he saw the reason for it. Bob's endurance had reached the limit, and he had fainted. End of chapter 12.